Alright, guys and gals, this is the new slogan for this build. I spend my money unwisely so you don't have to. Alright, this is episode 18 of the street truck build using junkyard parts, the junky hard body. And I've got a few updates here for you. Let me just take a sip of coffee here. It's the only way this build's going to get done is nice, strong coffee. Alright, so let me show you what we got going on here, and then I will tell you a little story. Alright, so we got diff fluid. Limited slip, 80W90 as per the service manual. Yes, we have a one-piece drive shaft here that was put together by Fleet Pride. That's not new news, but the real new news is that the rear yoke has been changed. It is now the proper bolt spacing to work with the two-wheel drive H233B, and it has a brand new greasable U-joint, which it didn't really need, but they did it anyways. So this is fully serviced, and it has replaceable U-joints on it. Yes. All right. About 5 years ago, a member of infamousnissan.com by the name of Midnight Tech ran into an 86.5 SEV6 regular cab two-wheel drive truck and shot an email to me asking me if I need any parts. And I said, well, if you can salvage the brake cables, I will buy the brake cables. So 5 years later, going through my stash of parts, here are the brake cables for an 86.5 two-wheel drive V6 regular cab pickup that are going to go on the red truck now that the red truck has an H233B axle sitting in it. Alright, I'll save the long story for last. OEM mud flaps, although they don't say Nissan on them, they are factory. These are off of that white Pathfinder that I bought. I have the rear set as well. These are going to go on the red truck. I figured since I'm putting bigger tires on the Pathfinder anyways, I don't need mud flaps. Alright, now let me tell you a long-winded story here about rear brakes on this 233B axle that I have. Alright, so if you go back a couple episodes of this series, you'll know that I was experimenting with putting 60mm four-wheel drive shoes on this axle, which originally used 45mm shoes. The reason I can get away with this is because, or even think about this, is because this is a really early H233B. It's an 86.5 build. They made them a certain way from 86.5 to about 89, and then they switched brake styles, and then eventually they switched the number of splines on the axles, and then everything got standardized and easier to work on. But during this early period of 86.5 to about 88, 89, they were running basically especially on the two-wheel drives, they were running a hybrid 720 style brake shoe slash heavier duty, larger brake drum kind of setup. And the two-wheel drive heavy-duty trucks, like the parts truck that I just got done scrapping, they got 45mm shoes. The Pathfinder and the four-wheel drive V6 trucks got 60mm shoes. We've been up and down this already, but I just want to get all the new viewers up to speed as to what I'm trying to do here. So I parted out an 86.5 heavy-duty V6. Kept the torsion bars, control arms, I kept the leaf springs, I kept the transmission, the engine, and the rear axle, and most of that stuff has, minus the engine and the tranny, most of that stuff has found its way into my red truck build. And what I was left with is I needed new brake shoes, new drums, and the catalogs are really screwy at that time period because there is a standard brake shoe, there is a standard brake shoe, and then there is a heavy-duty brake shoe, and then there's a dually brake shoe, and then there's a four-wheel drive brake shoe. The dualies run 220mm. The regular everyday trucks ran 254mm, and then about 1989, they all got switched to 260mm. So I ended up buying the wrong drums. I bought 260mm drums, incorrect. Found out that the two-wheel drive 254 millimeter drums are obsolete and can't be got. That left me with going, well, what am I going to do? I've got this axle that I got basically for free because I parted the truck out. I sold a lot of parts off of it. I kept the good bits. And now I've got a free axle that I'm working with that has 437 gears and factory limited slip. The axle's in really good shape. I didn't want to go out and buy a different axle or try and update this one because the housings are different. I decided, well, you know what? I'm going to venture into this territory. No one else is in their right mind is going to do what I'm doing, but hey, I like to make things difficult for myself. So here it is. The 260 millimeter brakes, if you're 88 and older, be careful because you could have one or the other or neither. You could have 220 millimeter. They were all over the place at that time. By about 89, 90, they had already switched to the newer style. Everything was pretty standardized, and you would see the same brake setup basically until about 2004 when they phased out the D22. Okay, so what's the difference between the 60 millimeter and the 45 millimeter shoes, you ask? Well, not just the width of the shoe, but the actual mounting of the shoe. The hardware is all the same. So when I say all same, I mean all same except for the length of the mounting pins. So if you're going to switch to 60 millimeter shoes, you're going to need a four-wheel drive hardware kit. The four-wheel drive hardware kit has all the same springs and everything that the two-wheel drive kit would have, except it's got longer pins that hold the shoes to the backing plate. That's it. So if you're doing this, you're going to want this Raybestos kit H17293, and if you look, you can see that this box probably goes back to about 1986. Yeah, vintage stuff, collectible, probably not. All right, so what I ran into was that the drums were discontinued. I got smart and started using the catalog against itself, and I figured out that the four-wheel drive Pathfinder from that time period used the exact same drum, except it was machined. The surface that the shoe rode on was machined out an additional about 15 millimeters. That made room for the wider shoes. So, you know, 45 versus the 60. So 15 millimeters extra machined out on the inside edge of the stopping surface. Everything else dimensionally is exactly the same. So I bought those drums, had them shipped from Rock Auto. I put them on the axle. They fit. Everything's going to be great with the drums. That got the brain turning and saying, well, if the drums fit, what else is different where I, can run these 60 millimeter shoes in place of the 45s? So I bought a set of 60 millimeter shoes, and I still have a set of 45s just in case none of this does end up working. I can go with the 45s. I said, what's the difference? So I started looking at the shoes, looking at the backing plates, looking at everything. And the only difference that you can find where they won't work on a two-wheel drive axle without modifications is the upper mounting pin at the top of the drum or top of the backing plate where the shoes rest. The pins on the two-wheel drive are actually shorter. So I contacted A Hardbody down in Florida. I said, hey, can you check and see if these anchor pins are replaceable or ever offered separately? He looked in his catalog and he said, yes, they're offered separately, gave me a part number, come to find out, discontinued, of course. So I put a note out on Facebook. Can you guys, if you run into one of these trucks, can you see if they still have it? I will pay you for it. I got a hit from somebody down in South Carolina, a friend of mine. Turns out that the truck was a 93. That's not going to work. It's funny because a 93 is too new. That's kind of ironic, but that's what we're working with here. So, come to find out, I had been walking by an 86.5 four-wheel drive truck for quite a few years now at my favorite junkyard. I just, I've been going there so often that I really never considered looking at the truck. I've plucked it for what I thought that I wanted. Then I said, well, that's an 86.5 four-wheel drive V6. That's going to have an H233B axle in it, which it ended up having. So last weekend I suited up and I went to the yard, and I was going to pay the yard to lift the truck up for me because it was sitting on 4 flat tires. I was going to have them lift it up for me, put it on blocks so I could just pull everything and then be gone. Well, Saturdays they do not do that service, so I had to go and find a little scissor jack out of a Honda Civic and a deck tray, because this jack would go and sink right into the mud. I found a deck tray and I put the jack, this is the most dangerous thing I've done, put the jack on the deck tray, jack the truck up just enough that I can pry the wheel off on both sides. I had to do this one on one side and then again on the other. And I stuffed the wheel underneath the frame rails. So I got it up high enough, pounded the wheel off, pounded the drum off, took the shoes off, and then got these two 17mm bolts to come loose by hand, which really made me shocked, because this is a 32-year-old truck that we're dealing with. So I present to you my solution to changing from a 45mm shoe to a 60mm shoe. This is a four-wheel drive anchor plate out of a 86.5 four-wheel drive V6 SE, and this had the H233B. I don't know what the axle code was. I didn't even bother to check. So this sits in on the back, backing plate. The wheel cylinder is in this area here. So it kind of straddles it. You don't have to take the wheel cylinder off to get to this, but you do need to remove two of the nuts that hold the backing plate to the axle housing itself. I did not know that. I thought it was just, looking at the pictures, it just looked like it was just two bolts holding it to the backing plate, but it makes sense that they would reinforce it with two studs going on there. So I ended up having to break those loose. Those actually came out by hand as well. I could not believe it. And $6 later, I have the solution to my 60mm brake shoe dilemma. So that's what's going to happen next weekend. I don't have the truck. I don't have any updates on actually doing anything on the truck this weekend, because my buddy is busy this Saturday, so he doesn't have time. So we just agreed that we would work next weekend and the week after that. So there we go. Let's see here. The only thing that I can see that might be a problem would be the spacing of these two bolts on the backing plate. I don't see why, because I don't know why Nissan would go so far as to change that, but just in case they do, I'm going to, at the point now where I would just take a grinder and slot the holes and just put those on there and run those shoes. So I spend my money unwisely, so you guys don't have to. All I'm going to say is that if you guys do this, this is the information. Here it is. Hopefully it works out for you. I just spent a little time with the wire brush going over them, trying to knock all the rust off. They are cast in steel, and I ran thread chasers down the holes and taps on the studs. We're all good to go. Just bolt them in and just proceed to do a regular disc or drum brake job. The only thing that I'm missing now at this point is a front brake cable that snapped on me a couple years ago, and it seems to be that there's no aftermarket support for that. So dealer wants $100. I'm going to have to figure out a way around that. We'll see what happens. Yeah, so there's your friendly update for episode 18 of building a street truck using junkyard parts. And staying true to its name, there are some junkyard parts for you. If you guys have any questions, comments, or concerns, just leave them down in the comments below. You can follow me on Instagram, Rainmaker_D21. I've been posting a lot of old vintage mini truck pictures from old magazines I've been collecting back in the day. Some cool stuff, a lot of Nissan ads and whatnot, and then of course pictures of all the trucks in their various states of disarray. So yeah, like, comment, subscribe, share. We're getting close. I'm hoping that this thing is going to run by next month. I really want to have this thing running by next month. I still got a few things left to do on it, but of course, we're way further than where we started, and I couldn't be more excited at this time. So thanks for tuning in, guys, and you guys have a great weekend, and I will tune in again next week. Take care.